And of course, Iman, 6 months later, a lot of people were wondering, how are we going to get to this particular point, if we are ever going to get to it? Of course, a lot of calls for the president to ensure that the board members are named, appointed, Parliament also going back and forth on this one. And we do understand, of course, as you see on your screens right now, that is the chair of the board, and he is the CFO currently at UNISA, and of course he is now going to be leading this particular board. He's served on several boards of directors. These include the Youth Development Institute of South Africa, the Sekhukhune District Municipality, as well as the Ekurhuleni Development Agency. He's now been tasked with leading that SABC board.
All right, so let's continue talking about the new board. It's been a big issue for us in South Africa, and it has, of course, very important meaning for the SABC itself and for all of us, really, in the building. Let's talk about Nomshado, who's the current CEO of the Association of Communications and Technology, a former head of the Presidential Commission for the 4th IR Project Management Office. So she comes with quite a comprehensive CV as well, holding a Master's in Business Leadership degree from UNISA and a Bachelor of Law from University of Fort Hare. This is just some of her qualifications.
And of course, Iman, she's not the only one, and those two aren't certainly the only ones. There is, of course, another face that is not a stranger to a lot of people here at the SABC.
Actually, two faces. The next two we're going to tell you about. Well, one is going to be a bit of a blast from the past, I suppose, but let's start with the one you're talking about first.
And of course, that is Patiswa Makopeni. She was of course, the SABC editor-in-chief, as well as the group executive of news and current affairs, and she also worked in the ENCA's senior editorial team, and she was a lecturer at the University of Cape Town at some point, and has, of course, really had led this particular institution. Lots of talk, of course, around, her now return to the SABC. Iman, a lot of people talking about this one as well, and it's one of the things that we'll unpack with the panelists tonight.
Yeah, well, I suppose having an appraisal of the organization from its operation to its administration, or taking some of those strategic decisions. And then this one, not altogether unknown in terms of her board duties, and this is Dr. Renee Horn. We will always fondly remember Renee as a colleague in the field, but she's been on the SABC board between June and October of 2022, bringing with her 2 decades of experience in business and higher education and politics, and also has a PhD in political economy from University of London. We'll continue to share with you the appointees and let you know a little bit about who will be taking the reins of the SABC.
And of course, these certainly aren't the only people that were named as part of the SABC board. I mean, you think about him, Port Zedwe as well, a lot of people familiar with him, who was our former colleague here at the SABC. So we'll continue then to unpack for you and tell you who exactly is on the board. But let's stay with this very subject and speak to Nomshado Lubisi-Nkosinkulu, Media Monitoring Africa Communications Manager. We also have Aubrey Tshabalala, Communications Workers Union General Secretary, and Hannes Buisson, Broadcasting Electronic Media and Allied Workers President. Thank you so much to you all this afternoon, and good afternoon to you. I'll start with you, Nomshado. Some say it's 6 months too late, looking at the fact that even your organization took this matter to court. Your reaction to the latest development?
I mean, so I think for us currently right now, we are relieved that the appointments were made, but we cannot avoid the fact that there are still key questions about how this process was handled that needs to be answered. And I think currently we are consulting with our legal team about the way forward with the Concord case. But I think we are honestly really anxious to ensure that something like this does not happen again in the future, because I think for the past few months, and currently I think this month, this week was actually our 6th month, actually showed how the effects of not having a board for so long could really affect, the stability and the functioning of the broadcaster. But I think for the board, we wish them luck. And I think they have a lot of work ahead of them, especially when we're looking at, the amount of day and nights that they need to bring in.
And listening to you then, I suppose the court action is not over then, if I'm listening to what you're saying. It may just continue.
Definitely.
All right. And Aubrey, for you, of course, a lot of people saying that it's, a mammoth task lies ahead for these incoming board members. Now they've had a handover report that is 6 months old and say that this is likely to be a challenge for them. Aubrey?
Oh, thank you. I thought you were still talking to Nomshado. Firstly, greetings to our viewers. It's news that we are welcoming, and more so is that the public pressure that has been there, including the court action by MMA, has assisted us to be at this particular point. But of course, there are challenges, as you have correctly outlined, that there will be that 6-month period that one has to account for in terms of the finances, not only on the finances, but a number of other issues. The point of that we did not have the board has led to a number of serious regressing issues. For example, the issues of workers at SABC, including salary increase, has not been taken care of, and a number of other things. So as a union, as where we stand now, we are really appreciating the time that the board has been appointed, and looking at those names again, we feel that there's credibility in terms of the credentials of the people in the board itself, including the chair and the deputy chair.
So for you, Aubrey, as I'm listening to you, then the issue of salaries may just be a big one as we now have this particular board.
Absolutely, it is the big one, but we're still having that cloud hanging of the accountability from the previous board, where we'll talk about that bailout that was given to the board, that they still have no reflection on it. And it will be interesting how to see the new board taking on that matter. And of course, it means that the board has to hit the road running in terms of the issues that it will be dealing with as going forward.
And Hannes, when you then look at, this particular development of now the SABC having a board, listening to Aubrey, he says that he's looking at the names. These people provide credibility, and for him, it looks like it might be a brighter, future for the SABC, or an easier kind of way forward, given the 6 months that the SABC has found itself in great difficulty without this governing structure. For you, do they inspire credibility?
Yes, absolutely. I think that it is the first time that we have so many broadcasters and then ex-SABC people nogal on the board, which is something that we have been complained about quite a lot in the past. We had boards at the SABC that had no clue about broadcasting, and they were put in charge of an organization, a public broadcaster, that is exactly doing that is broadcasting. So, as you've already said, Dr. Renee Horn is, she's well-known. We are glad that we have now someone that is quite new savvy in the form of Patricia Magopeni. Paul Chedu, we have talked about him. He was at some point the presenter of Question Time, I think. Had a lot of ability in terms of that and knowledge of the SABC and broadcasting, and of course he comes from a family of broadcasters. Then we also have some other people that makes us quite happy. I think Kadi, for instance, I see that she's got a IT background. It is something that is lacking at the SABC, I think. On that level, it's younger people, and that is most definitely the direction that any broadcaster is going into in this time that we're in. It is digital, online, and so on. What is of concern, and maybe you're going to come to that question, but what is of concern to us is that we do not see strong human resources, employee relations people on the board. I think the best that we saw was 2 people that attended some courses on how to chair disciplinary inquiries and so on. And that, I think, it's quite a big problem because the SABC, as we speak, it's broken in terms of staff morale, and we need a strong human resources person, a people's person. And I'm not saying that the other people that's on the board are not those people. people, but someone with a in-depth knowledge of human resources.
Yeah.
And that is the only thing that we see that's lacking.
And Aubrey, let me come back to you on that very point that Hannes raises. Here at the SABC, when you sometimes listen to, some of our fellow colleagues here, they are still scarred by this Section 189. And Hannes talks about this, law morale, and a number of people still scarred by what happened. Do you think that this board will be able to bring some much needed healing here and closure to this particular chapter?
It's on me.
Yes, Aubrey.
Okay, thank you. No, I think what we can do, we can only give the board a chance. I don't want to sing praises before they even come on board in terms of these issues. But yes, there's a number of issues that need to be responded to that leave much scars to SABC workers. We know for a fact that people were retrenched and some re-employed at SABC. And those are areas of focus that we should look into. But in adding on what Comrade Hannes has been saying, I think it's important going to the future that this board must also have a worker representative in it so that such areas can be effectively addressed. Having said that, we are only going to work with the board that will be actually willing to work with trade unions to take SABC forward. And if it's not willing to do that, it means we'll go contrary to the aspirations of the public in general and workers in particular.
Nomshado, of course, we're talking about the names and looking at the people who made it into this board. Interestingly, Dikwanyane Muhuba returns to the board, and I don't know if you remember during his interview, he spent a lot of time fending off questions around a scandal involving his doctoral degree, which the University of Limpopo refused to award him. He said that at the time he doesn't want to talk much about this matter as it's sub judice, as it appears that now this matter is with the courts. Your thoughts on that?
I think I'm with Aubrey here in the standing point of overall, let's give them a chance and see their contribution, especially now when we're looking at issues of credibility, when we're looking at some members that were obviously mentioned there. So at the current point, I don't want to necessarily also give an overview of certain members, but rather have a standing point of let's see and give them a chance. And obviously, as MMA, as I did state, we are at the point of speaking to our legal team on the way forward.
And Nomshado, let me stay with you. Let's look at the issue also of, succession. How important is this going to, to need to be dealt with? You look at the fact that we do have now a group CEO whose term is coming to an end, a CFO whose term is coming to an end. How should they be dealing with this at such a short space of time?
I think timeframes at this current point will really be the challenge. I mean, given the mere fact that it's 6 months later, as there's a whole 6-month backlog and a whole succession plan that really needs to be intact. I mean, one of the things that we've also been highlighted over the months of us compelling this to actually happen was we cannot take away SABC's wins. And we're really hoping that from this point forward, that the current board members are able and are actually supported by Parliament to be able to fulfill their duties.
And for you, Hannes, that very issue of succession, because it is not only a big issue when you look at what happens at executive level, but it also a big issue as well when you look at what happens right here with the foot soldiers at the SABC.
Yeah, look, I think one thing is clear, and if that did not happen, then someone should be addressed on this. There should be consequence management. We all know that those two contracts do come to an end. We know that the SABC is not in the business of renewing or extending contracts. So we would have thought that the recruitment process for a new group CEO and a CFO would have been started by now. Of course, there is no authority to appoint, not the minister, not the portfolio committee. No one can appoint those people. It would only be the board. But we believe that process should have started already, and that the SABC had advertised at least, and they have put it out there that we need a CEO and we need a CFO. And if that did not happen, then there's something wrong. And it's not only that. We believe that the SABC, and we don't know the figure, but it has reported the biggest loss most probably this is information that we have, and it's not confirmed. But they are posting a massive loss. Now, surely the SABC being on record many times that consequence management is the thing, that should also go upwards now. I think there should be consequence management. There should be questions asked. Why is the SABC in this very bad position? Because as my colleague has said, the issue around salaries is a burning issue. And what is going to be presented to staff is, well, we're running in a massive loss, and there is no further bailouts and all of that. So someone must answer as to why are we in such a bad state and condition.
And I wonder where those questions are going, where those answers are going to come from, Hannes. It'll be interesting to see who really takes that up and tells the nation, because really this is a public broadcaster with a public mandate. Let me thank you all for your time. Do appreciate it. And as you say, let's give the board a chance, see what happens, and hopefully chat again in the future. That was Nomshado Lubisi-Nkosinkulu, Media Monitoring Africa Communications Manager, Aubrey Tshabalala, Communications Workers Union General Secretary, Hannes Buisson, Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers President.